But I do want to start and say that even from ancient times, whether it was the ancient Greeks or the Romans, reputation has always been an instrument of power, always. It wasn't just to be strong. People loved the Greek philosophy and their ideas, and how Romans built the roads and their institutions. It wasn't just that they were strong. And power is an enormously important term that over the years, in the last 2 millennia, we've actually seen it. So we've had Machiavelli in his book, The Prince. He said, everyone sees what you appear to be, few experience what you really are. I think he was talking about the modern state of Israel, but maybe not then, 500 years ago, or whenever it was. But he first touched upon that difference between perception and reality. Now, we don't want our reality to be disassociated from our perception. That's just not good at all. And some would say we're getting there. But certainly understanding that there are 2 levels is very, very important. Then, almost 100 years later, Shakespeare in his play, Richard II, said the purest treasure mortal times afford is spotless reputation at the level of the kingdom, okay? And finally, 350 years ago, not finally, but one of the others who said it was the Sun King, Louis XIV, who understood that reputation amplifies power, and he was known for spectacle. And I just discovered that I went to a lecture about fashion, that fashion started and originated in France because Louis XIV, while he was building up the navy and the army, understood that when people saw him, they need to revere him, they need to appreciate him, and he began the silk industry in France so that he can wear all these incredible outfits, okay? So it's not just superficial, there's thought behind it. So if we fast forward now to the 20th century, basically academics in the 20th century tried to understand the idea of power, and they understood that there are 2 main forms of power, okay? I'm going to give you a very quick run through this. One is hard power, לבריאות. One is hard power, and the other is soft power. Hard power, we all know, basically it's tanks and banks, okay? It's the ability to cause other countries to do what you want because you've got a strong army, or you've got a strong economy, you can do sanctions. We see Trump now with tariffs. That is forcing another person to do what you want. If you're a human being, it's the same thing. If you're strong and burly, somebody comes up to you in the street, you punch them and you're sorted, okay? That's the hard power. But over the years, over the decades during the 20th century, scholars understood that there's other forms, other ways of getting countries to do what you want if you're your country. And that's called soft power. Soft power is a term that was coined by Professor Joseph Nye of Harvard University. He passed away last year, and in fact, Nicholas Cull is widely considered to be one of the new Joseph Nye, and in his book, he questions the concept of soft power. But Joseph Nye had been talking about it for a while, and then in 1989, the Berlin Wall fell. And what he noticed was that, yes, communism in terms of its tanks and banks was no longer as strong and successful, and therefore they could lose that sense of the war. But actually, the idea of communism was also something that the people living in that country didn't want anymore in those countries. They didn't want it. They wanted to wear blue jeans, then they wanted to drink Coca-Cola. They wanted what was on the other side of the wall. And that's why the wall fell. And so he called it soft power, the ability of a country to get what it wants through attraction, not coercion. All the things that a country has to offer, Noah mentioned quite a few of them. And then they understood that there's smart power, which is the combination of both. If you've got strong military, strong economy, and also a lot of things that other people want and aspire to, then you are not just surviving, you are thriving as a country. That's where you want to get to. And behind the scenes, there is also sharp power, a term that was coined in 2017, but it was referring to the Cold War. Imagine KGB sitting there thinking about how do we take information? We don't use it in the story, we don't use it in order to attract. We use it in order to confuse and divide and subvert the people living in the other country so that it's easier for us to try and impact them, influence them. Of course, when you're in a totalitarian regime, it doesn't matter what public opinion is. But when you're in a democracy, you can influence the people so that they choose the person in charge that you want them to. So that's sharp power, okay? So we've taken the hard power and the soft power. We understand there's smart power and sharp power, there's hybrid power, all sorts of things like that. But then the 21st century came along, and everything changed. And that terminology, which was suited for the 20th century, is no longer suitable for the 21st century. Because we've got social media and the telephones, and our entire life is going on in that little telephone. I wrote a book about how to engage the next generation with Israel in the digital era. And I have a section called Social Brackets Life Media. Because for young people especially, social media is their social life, right? And then it was social media, but now we've got AI and all these different things that are coming into our lives. We no longer know what's true, what's not true. There's no information to actually lean on, okay? What happened in the middle was COVID, and COVID accelerated technology. It made everything more available more quickly, and people were lonely, and they delved deeper into their phones, and that created more technology that caused people to stay on their phones because there's a lot of money there. And I end here with the picture of October 7th, because for us, October 7th is a watershed moment. But what it represents also to the world is what we're doing right now. It's in the UAE, and it's in Oman. And Trump is talking about it, and he might not be elected because of this. So he now needs to think, what is he doing in the Middle East? And the Americans don't know what the hell's going on. They don't understand because their fuel prices are going up, right? So this is where we're at. And in this century, we cannot use the same terminology. And that's basically what Nick Cull understood. And if you look at the subtitle, it's Refocusing Public Diplomacy for a Dangerous World, because that sharp power from the Cold War, of course, is still in existence. It's not just coming from the Russians. Many people in this room know that, actually know that, and the rest of us just feel it. Something's going on that is way worse than just having a great story and not being able to tell it, okay, because people don't believe you. And basically, the very, very basic notion is that reputational security is a national security, a strategic asset of national security. And if you think about it, our focus, and most people's focus when they think about national security, is these two pillars of defense and economy. Since the 21st century, it's cyber as well, because we understand that we cannot operate as sort of a modern society without cyber protections. Nothing we can do about it, and Israel is a global leader in this space. And reputation is another pillar, because we cannot do without it. We, Israel, know that very, very well. And that's why I said I think that this is going to be the most important thing over the next 3 years. So that's what we're talking about today. And here's the result of a country that for the last 55 years has not worried about, or worried enough about, its reputational security. This is a snapshot on the image that you see here on your left. The green one is Gallup. Gallup is one of the most respected polling companies in the United States. They have been asking this question, the sense of sympathy that one has towards Israel and the Palestinians since the 1980s. What you see here is since 2002, the top line is more sympathy to Israel, the Israelis, the bottom line is more sympathy to the Palestinians. Even if you ignore what's going on the Palestinian side and how well they're managing this story and this issue, look at what happened to Israel. And it didn't happen on October 7th. It's really important that people understand it didn't happen on October 7th. It happened way before. For those of you who are more knowledgeable about this, they know that this flip that we see of support, if it's Democrats or if it's young people, happened around 2021 already, 2022, okay? And of course, the other image is from Europe, just to show you that this isn't just an American thing. This is a global issue. So I'm going to leave this image up on the screen when we start our roundtables. And I want to try and give you a little bit of understanding of how it's going to work. This is the question we're trying to answer. How did Israel lose the world's support? And I have been, for the past 15 years, trying to say, no, we're not losing the world's support. Look at the graphs. I'd come in 2012 or whenever, and I'd say, look at this gap. All we need to do is pay attention to the different audiences, speak to them in different ways, ensure the ones who like us still like us, get the ones who don't to kind of see us in the way that speaks to their identity, and we'll be fine. So far, we're okay. And then, of course, nobody listened, and I'm not the only one. And here we are. I don't know if we would have actually succeeded if we had only done the positive stuff that I was talking about, the projecting of the positive, the story, the identity-based issue. Of course, there is something going on under the surface that is way more sinister. And that's also, obviously, an issue we're going to talk about today.